Okay, hello. We are going to be taking a closer look at the strategy assignment for this video instruction session. Now, the strategy assignment is where you're going to create a report on a reading strategy. And this session is going to go into a lot more detail about what's required, and I think that if you listen to this and invest the time, it will really help you to understand the requirements of the assignment and also to get a better grade, to earn more points than you would if you would not take the time to listen to this. So as we know, we're going to focus on a strategy that is linked to the elements of reading instruction. A chart was distributed during class or emailed to you or given to you somehow. Remember that we want to focus on intermediate readers, grades 3 through 5 or 3 through 6, and also that this is due for our 5th class. This is what the chart looks like. Remember our 5 big elements of reading are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. There are strategies underneath each one of these big 5. So let's say that you wanted to focus on fluency. You could either choose Reader's Theater, Tape-Assisted Reading, Student Adult Reading, or Partner Reading. My example is choral reading, and that fits under fluency. But since I've already done that one as an example, you will need to pick one of the other ones if you want to focus on fluency. Just a quick reminder, overview of the strategy assignment. We want to introduce and align our strategy, define and explain it with an intermediate scenario. We want to go over the benefits and the guidelines and include support materials. You can look at my complete example and the rubric in Brightspace. Right now, the module where these items can be found are the Instructor Support and Resources module. The first required component is that the strategy is introduced and aligned with a reading element. For choral reading, the purpose is to increase the number. Sorry, I had to get a drink. To increase the number of times students read through a text until fluency is achieved. And in the introduction and alignment section, I also align choral reading with fluency. All right, we're going to take a closer look at my example to clarify what you're supposed to do in this first section. Here we go. If we scroll up, you can see my cover page or my introductory page. Scrolling down, in boldface, we have strategy introduced and aligned with reading element. And I just have some little comments to help me to remember what I want to share with you. In this first section right here, you can see that I let you know that my strategy is choral reading. I give you a short purpose for the strategy. The purpose of choral reading is to increase the number of rereads so that students achieve fluency. I tell you that the strategy aligns with fluency instruction. And then this part that is highlighted is my thesis. This review of the choral reading strategy provides an overall explanation of the strategy and its precursor called echo reading, outlines benefits and guidelines for implementation, and includes support materials such as potential books and poems for many levels of readers. For every assignment for me, you should include a thesis. It's great to do so, to get into the habit of doing that for every assignment that you write. It helps to organize your writing. All right, the next section then, I'll have to make that a little bit smaller. The next section is strategy, definition, and explanation. In this section, just a quick overview, the students read along as a group with the teacher. Patterned or predictable books are very useful. The teacher models first and rereads the book, inviting students to join in. And we want to read 4 times for independent fluency. Now we'll take a closer look at my example to clarify what you're supposed to do in this section. In this section, you want to define your strategy. You've already introduced it and aligned it and given me your thesis. So in this section, depending on what your strategy is, you want to include some very general steps for instruction, touch upon maybe different types and what research says, and provide an intermediate scenario. In this first paragraph for this section, I've included a little bit of support from some outside sources. Be sure to do that throughout the assignment, but you don't want to overuse direct quotes. You don't want 30 or 40% of your written assignment to just be direct quotes from other sources. So here I'm basically explaining what choral reading is and how it is achieved. And if we scroll down, here is where I answer specific questions in this section. How does your strategy work specifically with intermediate students? For each section, you want to then think about your intermediate readers and focus on them. For choral reading with intermediate aged students, teachers should, for example, pick a text that is not too lengthy. I include that choral reading is great for adapting longer portions of text, and then this way, content like history or science can be summarized with key vocabulary and important points can be emphasized. This is a part of choral reading that is especially appropriate for intermediate students because choral reading can then serve 2 purposes. 1, to increase readings, which is what choral reading does for every student that is involved with choral reading. But 2, especially for intermediate readers, it can help make content accessible for students and can apply to different subject areas. Anything else in this section? I also go over the different types of choral reading. If your strategy has variations or different types, you can include that in this section. The types of choral reading are antiphonal, dialogue, cumulative, and impromptu. And then also in this section, at the end of your explanation, you want to include a specific scenario that features intermediate readers and also features your strategy. I'd like you to pay particular attention to how very detailed this scenario is and the complete picture that it paints for choral reading and for the specific groups of students in third grade. Echo reading is a closely associated strategy that helps a child develop confidence and fluency. So I just kind of start to talk about how I was doing this lesson plan and the students were very tired. So I started with echo reading, which is where the teacher models first, reads one sentence, and the students followed. And this kind of warmed them up for the actual choral reading that we did. After we did the choral reading, then I chose a small group of third grade readers that were having fluency issues. We choral read the story again, focusing on accuracy, pauses, and prosody. And this experience helped these word-for-word readers gain an additional rereading and help them connect fluent reading with a fluency rubric. So I'll show you the fluency rubric that is at the end here. At the end, I have included a fluency rubric, and this is a great rubric for intermediate students. It says, I read at a rate that is appropriate. So it's something that students can use to self-check and self-evaluate, and that's great for intermediate students. They love to mark their progress. They love to mark their improvement. So that's why that specific scenario features intermediates, and that's what you want to aim for in your particular assignment. So we'll take a look at the next section then. All right, the benefits of your strategy. Generally for choral reading, fluency and confidence increases. All students are given the opportunity to read the entire text daily, but no one's put on the spot. Choral reading focuses students on reading with prosody and also promotes comprehension. We'll take a closer look at that section in my example. The benefits section is where you want to research the pros of your strategy. Why is your strategy helpful to students? What are the beneficial results for intermediate readers? And if we scroll down the highlighted area, after I give some general benefits for choral reading, I remembered to gear my research and my writing to intermediate students. Choral reading includes benefits in overall comprehension and specific understanding for both narrative and content reading, and in feelings of increased spirituality and bonding. According to an author of a resource I had, as students advance into upper elementary grades and their texts become more accelerated, and therefore fluency reading instruction such as choral reading helps struggling readers to remain in a mode of comprehension as opposed to a mode of decoding. And we talked in class about how important that is. So as you can see, I'm including some research that I found. This research is specifically geared toward older readers, intermediate readers. And choral reading aids intermediate students' comprehension of content area text. Once again, I can talk about how it is important for students to be able to gain access to that difficult text that they have, the increased vocabulary, the more complex textbooks that they have. And choral reading can help you to compose and create something that focuses in on the key vocabulary that they need to use. And the good thing about choral reading that can apply to intermediate readers and the Common Core is that it can be used for both narrative and informational reading. So that's something that is stressed as students get older as well. So those are my benefits that specifically focus on benefits for intermediate readers. After I give like a general. I have my cats running around, picking on each other. All right, the next section is strategy guidelines. Some of my general guidelines are to select material with care and give advanced thought to interpretation. But because you're investing this time in for this session, we're going to take a closer look at my example, and hopefully that will clarify some things for you. My guidelines are here, and I included little bullet points for each one. Once again, you can read here that this particular guideline, as many of mine do, relates to intermediate readers. Intermediate students become more experienced. They can offer ideas as to which lines may be most successfully spoken by, let's say, the whole class, by part of the class, or assigning individual roles. And we saw that when we looked at the Shakespeare choral reading example on video that we watched together. I know there's another thing I wanted to say here. Again, for intermediate readers, it is appropriate to include and refer to the fluency rubric. Intermediate students are the ideal age to incorporate rubrics in order for criteria to be clear. They can actually even offer tips and advice according to a prepared rubric as well. And students of this age can even assign rubric grades or points, assign them to benchmarks. That really helps to clarify the expectations for them as well. Some of my other general guidelines: the teacher should circulate among the group to monitor progress. Teachers can record notes and observations about the oral language development of the students. Intermediate students require extensive focus and role-playing concerning how to support peers with specific and positive comments. Intermediate students, readers, are not as kind as primary, I have found, so it is really a good idea to give a lot of time to helping them to come up with things to say to other people who are reading, and how to role play so that they're being supportive of each other during this process, and basically during any process that you have going on in your classroom. It's especially important for partner reading. And then at the end here, I tell you that my guidelines have been adapted from one of my resources that's listed in my reference section. And by adapted, I am giving credit to my resource source that I used, but I also am stressing that I did not simply copy and paste these guidelines. Instead, I adapted them for intermediate readers, and I focused on what I thought was the most helpful, and I put them in my own words. So this is not a cut and paste with then this simple reference at the end. We want to avoid just complete cut and paste from a source. You want to add explanation. You want to adapt it for, in this case, intermediate readers. Then we have support materials. We shared some of them in class. My support materials include a bibliography and videos demonstrating choral reading. I just put these in the final section before my reference, and you can see going through that each of my sections has a bold-faced heading. There's one for support materials. There's one up here for choral reading guidelines. There's one for choral reading benefits. And then I have my references at the end. You're going to need a separate reference page because this assignment calls for outside resource or research to support your separate sections. We discussed how you can research using readingrockets.org or readingquest.org. Also, if you go into Brightspace and go to that module that's instructor support and resources, there are a lot of introductory, help you to get to know the strategy resources in there, but you'll still need to do your own outside research as well. Now, a little bit about the presentations. Remember, it is important to include a summary sheet for your strategy, as our course asks for us to create a class strategy portfolio. Depending on how large our class is, this might be a very small portfolio or a very large portfolio, but that's okay because the resources that I just referred to in the previous slide from instructor support and resources, that can also be part of your portfolio, your strategy portfolio. You can make a hard copy for every student, or you can just email it to everyone, including me. Remember, my handout for my strategy was just very straightforward. Here it is. I give you like a quick definition of fluency and choral reading. I included some pictures in it. I gave you like the part that I thought was important, the guidelines, but I don't have it like very crowded. I don't have so much information that no one's going to read it. I just tried to stick with some main points. You can do that for yours as well. And again, you can email it or you can print out however many you need to distribute. And please give me one as well, either emailing or hard copy. All right, final slide, we did it. You also want your presentation to be interactive. This can be as easy as asking a survey question at the beginning, or a short discussion, or demonstrating a portion of your strategy with your peers. So for this part of our online session, we took a closer look at the strategy assignment. And if you have any additional questions about your strategy assignment or need some help with some resources, it's better to look into all of that earlier rather than later, and to email me if you need any guidance. Thank you for attending this session, and please continue to access your email in case there are additional parts of our course or our class that we want to focus on. I don't want you to miss anything, even though we are going online for our session.